any World War II veterans in here? Because I want to say very much thank you. Without you Americans, I would not have been standing here. Rotterdam was, first of all, I want to tell you what you Americans did. We had a tremendous hunger in 1944 because of the wisdom of London. I still question that. They told all the railroad people to go on strike. So the Germans retaliated by not sending any food into Rotterdam. So the first 4 months in 1945, there were 2,500 died directly from hunger, and there were about 4,000 deaths because of it. So altogether, more than 6 people were just in the 4 months, and that was the end of. By the end of April 45. So it was so bad that there was an alarm apparently in the world, which we didn't know about because we didn't have the news, that the Americans sought permission from the Germans to go and fly over Rotterdam and drop food. So in April 28, a week before we were liberated, there came all those Lancasters flying over Rotterdam, very, very low, tipping their wings to greet us. And we were all out on the street, and they're dropping food for us. And that was our first glimpse, yes, the war was over. And it was going to be real. I mean, we could see the pilots in those planes. They tried to fly as low as they could. And it was incredible. Even speaking about it now, it's very emotional for me. Because I said, I've seen people dying in the streets. People don't realize how bad it was. And then there was no food, no electricity. All the traffic had stopped. All the factories had for 4 months not worked. There was nobody in the street because we had to stay in bed just to conserve our energy and to stay warm because we also had no wood. The people destroyed the parks, they even destroyed their own homes, took doors down which they didn't have to use so they could make some kind of a fire to keep warm. It was the coldest winter, and maybe you remember the stories from the Battle of the Bulge, how cold it was that winter. So when we saw those Americans, can you imagine living like that and not knowing there would be ever going to be an end to it, and then seeing those American planes coming over us. We also, of course, tried to keep up with the Americans as much as we could, but we were without radios. They were forbidden. But that's where I started to read, because I started to forget to tell you something. I'm getting old and I forget. Everybody, I have to read a little bit. Everybody sees in movies how the French blew up railroads, but the Underground did far more than that. There were 25,000 Jews in hiding in Holland. After February, we got 30,000 railroad people in hiding. That was in the whole of Holland. In Rotterdam, where obviously I was, 50,000 men were deported for work. 20,000 men managed to escape and go in hiding. All those people needed hiding places, ration cards, food, and money to have something. And also for their families, because all the men were away, so obviously there were no income, including the railroad workers. So what the Underground did was, first of all, we had to raise money. We had to raise food to supply those people, because usually those people were with people who were not very rich. They didn't have big, nobody in Holland has big houses. So so it was not easy to find hiding places to hide several people. You all have been to, I mean, a lot of you have been to Anne Frank house, but that was luxurious in general for the Jews. Usually there were 8, 10 to one room. Also, sometimes there were just a husband and wife in one room. But if the Jews, they couldn't go outside for 3.5 years. Imagine being in one room with your husband or wife for 3.5 years. And no television, no telephone. So they had to be moved quite a bit. You know, there came a lot of complaints and that they wanted other places to go to. So the food, we tried to steal them from the German deposits. We had to raid the distribution centers for the ration cards. Dat kan we zien. And so that was quite a huge undertaking. Can you imagine all the thousands of people who had to first finding hiding places, getting food, getting the cards. And so there was, I've seen a lot today, you know, a lot of organizations, but believe me, the Underground was a big organization too. And that, and usually that is the part we call the civil part of the Underground, who did all that, raising the money. And all that money and everything had to be brought to the families and had to be shipped around. And the men could not be on the streets because they were deported to Germany to go and work there. So logical, that's where the girls came in, or the women came in. So that's how I came in. Also, we listened to we had the radios hidden. So the Underground got some news from England that had to be printed, all illegal, all in secret, and they had to be distributed to the people. So they knew some of the news, and of course the big news was how far are the Americans? You know, that is, we were following that every day. And because as told that all the radios were confiscated by the Germans. And you had to be very careful when you had a radio, because you landed in prison. The Germans were going down in the street with cars, with some kind of, at the time, a radio or whatever, so they could hear the radio waves. So they could pick up those people who did have radios. And that was one group. And I started off with the small, I started off small, of course, because I was only 14, 15 at the time, high school, by distributing the papers, the news to the people. Gradually, you know, they ask more of you, and can you do this, can you do that, can you do that? And I looked, as I say, I looked a little bit alien. So the Germans, you know, they let me pass a lot of times, because I fitted the picture of a very upstanding right person. So that was the other group. Now, of course, what you like to hear, the juicy part, the fighting group. The time is far too short to tell you all the stories. That's eventually I will do it sometimes if you want to, but I don't want to keep you here all day, because I can talk all day about the war. We had the guns. We got we did the raiding, and I'm talking we because the last half year of the war I was in the one with the fighting group. We sabotaged the railroads. There sank ships in the harbor, in Rotterdam harbor. They gathered information on German installations and troops, and related information to England. And we helped with weapon droppings. That sounds, of course, to the young people very exciting. Of course it wasn't, because they had to be dropped at night. And the only light we could have was with cars, if you had still a car. So they had some light to know where to get down without the Germans knowing it. Also with the instructors. I must say, I always have had the deepest regard for those instructors, because they were in England, and Dutch, and they voluntarily let themselves being dropped in that enemy territory to do that. And even while they were being dropped, some of them got shot while they were hanging in the air. So that they dare to leave that safe England to do that, you know, that is to me absolutely one of those are real heroes. Also what our group did, we got 40 prisoners out of the police headquarters. So political prisoners who were going to be sent to concentration camp, and they managed to get them out, just like the movies, described as Germans, and so-called bringing in some prisoners, and that's why they opened the gates, and that's how they got in, and that was the one rated more successful, because there was also another raid, the bad one, where they were not successful. And after the war, right after the war, we had to act as a kind of interim government, because of course we had no government. In 1940, our queen left for England and took the government with her. And yeah, now, of course later on I've questioned that, and a lot of people have questioned that. Because we were still fighting at that time. We still had, they left 2 days before Holland surrendered. And then so they were the one who gave us the orders, but they were in England. And once in a while they gave us orders, but of course they didn't do much. And because they were not there, the Germans could put all those people in charge, because the government had left. That's why Holland was so bad. And that's why nearly every Jew was deported and found. Because it was far worse in other countries. The whole thing was far worse in Holland, because the government left, and the government we did get back were all Germans, or German sympathizers. So right after the war, they were all gone, so the underground had to maintain order. And so we were to see that, you know, people stayed in place till the Americans came in. Well, I'm much better when I talk out of my heart. I better tell you I have all facts, but I will have to tell you about the time when I met my first American. Because we have been, of course, on tenterhooks for Americans. Every day, where are the Americans? Where are the Americans? Where are the Americans? And then it were the Canadians who freed us, Rotterdam. Because the Americans only reached the lower part of Rotterdam, Holland. And as you know, with Market Garden, in September they were stopped. So then the south of Holland was liberated in 44, but we were liberated in 45. So it was the Canadians who reached us first. So I still hadn't seen Americans. But after, I can't remember how long, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks later after liberation, there was a French lieutenant. He had to bring prisoners to Maastricht, to the Americans, to deliver them to the Americans. And he had to drive that bus with those prisoners by himself. And so he came over to our headquarters and asked whether somebody was free to go in the back of the bus with a gun, you know. So they chose me. Can you imagine? Then I was still 17 years old, sitting in the back of the bus with my gun. And I had, by the way, learned to shoot, and pretty well, I must say, you know, even. That's what my husband, even the Texan, he told me I was in pretty good shot. So we went to Maastricht with those people, and when we landed in Maastricht and we delivered them to the Americans, they invited us, the captain and me, and my brother came along to be my chaperone after all I was only 17, to their officers' mess that night. And that's when I saw my first American. It was to me absolutely, you never can imagine, this was a big thing today, but that was the biggest thing for me. That officers' mess with all those American officers in dress uniform. And then playing all those American songs, and not only that, the food, you know. Oh! So I danced the whole night with those Americans, ate myself silly. No, I say I can't tell much more, but I don't want to keep you. But I want to leave this with the message, since this, after all, you know, the spirit of freedom. And I say, do not take freedom for granted. We did in 1939. And what the Germans did to the Jews in Poland was not our affair. We let it happen. We were scared. And we were wrong. Because look where it brought us. And the lesson is, do not let fear overtake you. Fear is far worse than action. Be true to yourself and fight for what you think is right. All those US soldiers who gave me freedom, they believed in that freedom and acted upon that. They overcame their fear and did what was right in their hearts. And that also applied to the underground. And the message is, it's better to act than live in fear. And that's the spirit of freedom.